In today's show, we curate and break down under the radar shows, movies, videos, etc. Each of these pieces of content helps create thought-provoking conversations around actually walking the talk. Now, I'm constantly surrounded by creative and unique personalities recommending the latest interesting content.
I think this video has to sneeze because it's gonna go viral!
I want to give you an inside look into my most recent top picks. The first of these shows is called The Rehearsal. Here's the trailer.
I've been told my personality can make people uncomfortable. Hey, how to make love all night.
Well, you know.
I think we're gonna get along pretty well. But I've learned that if you plan for every variable, a happy outcome doesn't have to be left to chance. This conversation's going pretty well.
Yes.
So that's no accident. Everything that's happened today, I've rehearsed it. Hey, hi, Nathan. Dozens of times. In a replica of your home. This is what we can do for you and you.
You know, just off the top of my head, I would say, sure, let's go with it.
This is gonna be fun.
It will be.
My goal is for your rehearsal to reflect reality.
The government has Sasquatch liaisons.
I love you, Daddy.
With this show, if your performance isn't accurate, you could ruin someone's life.
This is all sort of absurd.
Keep them crying, don't let up.
Okay.
I gotta tell you something. I don't want to talk to you again.
Do you find it's been healthy for you here?
Are you sure you want to do this?
I don't really like lying to people.
You're a liar.
Yeah, neither do I.
You're Willy Wonka, I am Charlie Bucket.
I'm the bad guy in
Well,
that?
but he's a dream maker,
Okay.
and you're making some dreams happen for
But
me.
kids died in the factory?
Well, they supposedly died.
I'll read the book again just to look into it.
Okay, so like just rewatching that trailer gives me so much joy. And I mean, if you can't tell, like I'm super excited that we're talking about this first one. And if you think that one is interesting, then definitely keep watching and listening, because like this is the, if I'm ranking these on the top 3, this is number 3. So we got 2 and 1 to go. Okay. So I wanted to just read something about The Rehearsal so people kind of get a little bit better understanding as to why this show was done the way it was. So the synopsis from the internet here says, Nathan Fielder returns to television for a new series that explores the lengths one man will go to reduce the uncertainties of everyday life. With a construction crew, a legion of actors, and a seemingly unlimited resources, Fielder allows ordinary people to prepare for life's biggest moments by, quote unquote, rehearsing them in carefully crafted simulations of his own design. When a single misstep could shatter your entire world, why leave life to chance? So the reason why I'm even talking about this today and why I think this is so important for this show is because some of the things that I kind of walked away from after watching this show, or in fact, even watching just a single episode, I thought to myself, like, what would happen if more people went to maybe not the lengths that Nathan went to in this show, but like if you went to the lengths of like actually rehearsing some of the things that because in our own heads, we make certain scenarios and outcomes way worse than it probably ends up being once you just actually do the hard thing. And so like, to give you an example, if you were wanting to like, I don't know, quit your job or break up with your spouse, or, you know, you had something that you needed to say to your family, sometimes we mull these things over and think of the worst possible outcomes, and that ends up becoming debilitating. It keeps us from even going ahead and doing it because we just think it's so bad, right? But this show kind of shows you, and what I mean by like, you know, in the trailer, it said that he will take a replica of your house. It's not like a small replica that you put little figurines in there. Like he literally builds a life-size house that is exactly like your house. Like you wouldn't know the difference. It's amazing.
Well, all right.
And then,
so you got to explain it. Because, all right. So for the audience, I haven't seen all these shows. I've seen. We'll get to the last one, most of it, but I haven't seen any of this. So you got to explain a little bit of the context of exactly what exactly is going on. So he's, first off, why do these people agree to meet with him? And then number 2, what is he promising them?
Yeah, good question. So my understanding, because keep in mind, I just was suggested this show and I started watching it and I was like, wow. So actually reading the synopsis was the first time I did that today. Like that's the first time I even read the synopsis. But without having that synopsis, basically I walked away understanding that these people reached out to the show, or he maybe interviewed a handful of people, maybe auditioned a handful of people to try to find people that had life-changing scenarios, right? Like what do you call it here? People that wanted to prepare for life's biggest moments. So I imagine that there was some kind of audition process that says, hey, we've got a show that we're doing on HBO. Is there a moment in your life that you've been dying to to get out? And so each of those people, I think, agreed to do the show because the hope was that Nathan would help them through said life moment. And so off the
And
top of my head,
they're under the impression he's like some expert in this. Like he's obviously not using his real name. Like he did this with Nathan Knows Beth, I think. Or is he using an alias? And he's
no,
like,
it's him.
okay.
Yeah.
But what?
Yeah.
So they just trust him because he's.
Well, I mean, again, and I don't want to give I don't want this to be a spoiler, and I don't think this is nothing we're gonna say today on the show. By the way, is a spoiler, because each of these shows I think are well done in a way that like you could watch one episode, you can watch the last episode, and it won't really matter. They kind of stand alone, but there's nothing really to trust him or not trust him on, and it kind of happens in real time. So. For instance, like one of the episodes, this guy, he's a part of this like trivia team, and it's really like a big part of his life. Like without this trivia team and having trivia nights and things like that, like he probably wouldn't have anything to live for. So he has something that he has to admit to the group that he's been lying about for a long time. And you see just how kind of it was the black guy that was in there that that we saw in the trailer.
Okay.
And he's obviously a little bit awkward, he's probably on the spectrum a little bit, right? So that has something to do with it. But he's across the screen or the room from this person who's like, hey, I took a replica of your home and I rehearsed every one of these situations. So that's the hook. I think the hook is like, do you think this conversation is going well right now? And the guy's like, well, yeah. Well, why do you think it's going well? I don't know. He's like, it's going well because I rehearsed this exact moment.
Right.
So the guy's like, well, what do you mean? And he didn't just rehearse it once. Nathan rehearsed it dozens of times.
Right.
And so he's already prepared. Nathan himself is prepared for what that guy might say.
Okay.
It's incredible.
Okay.
It's incredible.
Interesting. It is. I mean, it is an interesting concept, and we'll see later what's similar with this one. They are in on it, but it is this similarity to Jury Duty where it's kind of constructed in a lot of ways. There's this sort of synthetic and natural element going on, but I mean, it's supposed to be a comedy, right? Ultimately, or is it?
Yeah, I think it's a comedy, but it's like very dry humor.
Yeah,
and
he's a dry,
right, and he's a very like dry, humorous guy.
Okay.
But there's a lot of like actionable steps and a lot of takeaways from it. So once you finish that first episode, then I think most people are going to walk away thinking, okay, what is the next episode, right? Because like to the average person, telling someone in your trivia group about something you lied about for a long time ago might not seem like that dramatic, right? It might not seem like that's a huge life moment, but for him it is. For each person, we all have our own level of spectrum. Yeah.
So for you and for the audience, we're gonna keep these nice and concise and short, and kind of give you guys curated our top 3 when we do these video segments. So for you, kind of Josh, then what's sort of your main takeaways, and what's sort of the pitch for the audience why they should check this out?
So my main takeaway is that when we go through life, whether it's working out or it's eating food or it's whatever, when you're holding on to something that feels like it's the end of the world if it was revealed, then there are tools out there, and this show is just one tool, right? Or one resource for this tool. But there are ways to rehearse what the outcome might be. So I don't anticipate anyone being deathly afraid of going up in front of thousands of people and speaking, like doing a speaking engagement, if they've never done it, especially if you have a fear of speaking, right? So a scenario that you could do is take a page out of this book, right, or this show, and rehearse it. And instead of rehearsing it in front of the mirror or rehearsing it in front of your peers, like your friends and things like that, people who aren't going to give you real advice and feedback, you could actually take a group of actors, similar to what Nathan did in the show and in one of the other episodes, but you could do that and rehearse it so that when you get to the final product, you would have already done it a handful of times and you'll know exactly what to expect. And so, you know, if you're nervous about starting your diet because you're not sure what's to happen, then you have an opportunity to rehearse what is to happen.
Definitely.
So,
and studies have shown that when you hold yourself accountable with friends and family, letting them know this is your goals, then you tend to follow through more. So it's good on a lot of fronts. Very cool. I'll have to check it out. Let's set up the next one then. What's our next show we got?
number 2 on this list is How To with John Wilson. The executive producer of this show, How To with John Wilson, is also Nathan Fielder. And I think that the two characters, so Nathan himself and John Wilson, I think they are a lot alike in that they both have this dry humor and are a little bit on the spectrum. So here's the trailer for that.
Hey, New York. HBO is having a hard time explaining what my show is, so I just figured that I'd just try to do it myself. Usually the host of a TV show is right in front of the camera, and you can see exactly where the voice is coming from, which I guess people like. But in my show, you never really see the host, and that's because I'm actually behind the camera the whole time, filming everything you see. So instead of having to stare at me for the whole program, you get to see all the cool stuff that I like to film instead, which I think makes it a lot more exciting to watch. I spent a lot of time walking around New York, trying to find the answers to some of life's biggest questions. Sometimes I talk to people that I meet out in public and ask them for their advice.
Confused.
Other times I'll just open up a door and see what's on the other side. And
Of course.
every now and then I leave town for a couple of days and explore what other cities have to offer. But at the end of the day, I always come right back. It's kind of like that show Planet Earth, but if it was only in New York and David Attenborough was forced to film everything himself. So stick with me, and I'll show you how to solve problems that you didn't even know you had. Because even if it looks like you've got it all figured out, there's always a million ways to get it wrong.
Oh, that's beautiful. Just the beauty of New York, Josh.
Oh my
All
goodness.
in all our glory.
Right. Okay. So that one is called How To with John Wilson. And briefly, I'll just read the synopsis and then let's dive into this one because this one is on another level. It's amazing. So the rehearsal was, I think, a little bit more like serious moments and things like that, and maybe not quite as funny, but there are definitely some funny moments for sure. How To, How To with John Wilson. He's a documentary filmmaker and self-described anxious New Yorker. But now John Wilson comes to HBO as a writer, director, cameraman, producer, and narrator of this docu-comedy series that finds him covertly and obsessively filming the lives of fellow New Yorkers while attempting to give everyday advice on relatable topics. Now, the cool thing about this show is that, like, if you weren't watching Simply Walk the Talk, or if you didn't have someone like me like encouraging you to watch this show, you would probably like stumble upon it and see like, okay, one of the episodes here is how to make small talk, and another one is how to put up scaffolding and how to improve your memory and things like that. And you might think, like, if you take it seriously, you might think, well, I don't want to know how to create small talk and I don't want to put up scaffolding, but it's more than that. So what I see it as is a show that gives you insight into a variety of topics that is seen from the eyes of someone like John Wilson, right? Who's a little quirky, very obsessive. And, you know, I just imagine literally he has a camera with him everywhere he goes. And so while the episode about scaffolding might include scaffolding if he's talking to someone and this someone decides to mention something about, I don't know, referees or about basketballs or something like that, then he will explore that. And so it's like I would call it a show that is like a rabbit hole. And that's how my mind works. I love rabbit holes. And he basically, every person he talks to, he treats each person with like a certain amount of seriousness. But he makes it's funny though, because that's how New Yorkers are, right? So yeah, it's a good one.
I'll have to check it out. So for you, what were some of the big takeaways ultimately? And looking at it quickly, I do think it's an interesting style, sort of like a cinema verite, where he's, not in front of the camera, but always behind it. But it seems like, especially being a New Yorker yourself, it'd be close to heart because it gives you a lot of insights the everyday New Yorker sees, but maybe isn't shown or glamorized or overlooked. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Well said. So I'll give you a couple examples. So, and to your point, you're 100% right. And in that, if you live in New York, you're gonna watch this and go, yeah, like this is all the time. If you don't live in New York, you will see a different side of New York, because this is by far one of the most unglamorous sides of New York, but it's the realness of New York. So if you really want to, and it's not just New York, by the way. So he goes across the country because, again, if somebody mentions that there's this convention in I don't know, in California, he's gonna go to the convention, right? And it would be the most random things. So like, I walked away from this thinking like, this is a really interesting perspective. I never really thought of it that way. And by the way, throughout the entire series, I think you see him maybe 3 times.
Okay.
And it's because maybe it's a camera reflection or whatever. And so I kind of like that, because he's not like glamorized, and he's not doing it for himself to be on there. And I also noticed that it looks like they filmed this show and then he's reading the script. And so he adds his quirkiness in the way he reads it. And I love that, So one of the episodes down here is called episode number 5 is How to Split the Check. Now, we all know how uncomfortable it is when it comes to splitting the check, period, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, if you're, wealthy or you're not. There's always this uncomfortable moment of, when the check comes, what do you do? And he basically, he'll take a statement and he'll find situations in which that happens, right? So like, for instance, like there's some people he'll say, if you really are uncomfortable with splitting the check, then you could find a way to pat yourself down as if you're looking for your wallet, in hopes that the person across from you is going to pull out theirs first, And it's funny because he shows this time and time again, right? So you see that playing out. It's amazing, man. It's amazing.
Well, it's interesting. It seems like it definitely gets into the minutia of sort of the smaller things in life, like I'll have to check it out. I definitely think there's some interesting insights there. And I think for a lot of people, these are also important little micro lessons and just sort of day-to-day life. But also, I think it's a good, like, as you're speaking to him never being on camera, I think is also a good example of art that's not so egocentric. It's making it more about the person he's interviewing it, and it's making it more about their life. And I'm sure there's some interesting people with, just understanding certain, also just like a glimpse into the current state of our country. I mean, this is also just a great way to kind of get a snapshot of the everyday people and what people are going through. So, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll wrap it up by saying, and well said, you said that very concisely. I'll wrap it up by saying, this is literally an example of how to create more awareness. That's my takeaway.
Okay.
And it might seem like everything you just mentioned, Josh, doesn't seem like it's going to give me awareness, but just watch the show and trust me. Trust me, you're going to watch the show and then give me your feedback, because I guarantee you're going to walk away thinking like, wow, I never even expected that. Like one of the episodes, he goes to Cancun thinking that he's going to get away, like have a relaxing vacation, and he happens to not have that. So I'm not going to give it away, but
And to dive into the subtlety of life.
This is my number one of all of these. It's one of the most wholesome shows on TV right now, on the internet, whatever. And I'm positive, right? Mark my words, like whatever day you're reading this, this is before they announce the Emmys, the Emmy winners. This show has 4 Emmy nominations, I believe. And I promise you, it will win something.
When they say jury of your peers, I think that's accurate. I mean, how long does this normally take? Have you done this before?
I'm a recognizable public figure.
Respectfully, I don't recognize you.
Juror number 54.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm gonna be upset if I don't get on the jury. Me? Ready, guys? Here we go.
All right, so this is what happened. Allegedly, we got defecation. There's a lady named Jacquees. I'm in it.
Try to keep an eye on her.
I want to do the best job that I can.
What do people usually say when they're trying to get out of this?
I'm only going off of thing I've seen on Family Guy.
Wait, what was it?
I've seen Peter pretends to be racist to get out of jury duty.
Would you be able to be a good juror for this matter?
Sir.
I'm racist.
Sir, please have a seat.
I don't know why I said that.
Eliminate that for the next time.
Totally. Yeah, that's a stupid idea.
The jury duty.
Sorry for the paparazzi.
This is a problem.
You're sequestered.
I googled it. It's isolated.
Isolated.
Separated. Todd is a very interesting individual. He showed up wearing chair pants.
The difficulty is the lack of a bend.
Jesus Christ.
What are we looking at in here?
Hi, guys.
No!
Sorry. Jump scare.
This is the most unorthodox trial that I presided over.
Oh my God!
I try not to judge a book too much by its cover, but...
Call your next witness.
It's true that you were once arrested for masturbating in a movie theater.
Yes, that's true.
What was the movie?
Pacific Rim Uprising.
It's not sexy.
What?
I saw that. There was zero arousal for me.
This literally feels like reality TV.
Ah.
It's getting close there. It's getting close there.
Synopsis of this one is, so this is Jury Duty. The series chronicles the inner workings of a jury trial in the U.S. through the eyes of juror Ronald Gladden, a solar contractor from San Diego who is unaware that his jury duty summons was not official and that everyone in the courtroom, aside from him, is an actor. Everything that happens inside and outside the courtroom is planned. Now, why is that important? And again, this is not a spoiler or anything like that, because we know that this is fake, right? So I think you can go into this going, oh, okay, well, let's see how it plays out. And that's what you want to do. You want to get to the end. I binge watched this over, less than 48 hours. And even just watching that trailer again, I get so much joy because it's such a wholesome show. And I think when you watch the show and you come away from it, my hope is that you're a better person, right? My hope is that you're more like this Ronald guy. So I know you haven't finished it yet, but what are your thoughts on it so far, Gordon?
Well, it's really interesting how they edited and they produced it. It's really well cast. We were discussing it beforehand, and I think they clearly casted improv comedians as well, who are very good at yes-anding, going with the flow of a joke or a scenario. So you see that throughout it where, and I haven't got to the final episode, but you said they show a lot of how it's made in the final episode, but the whole time you're also thinking while you're laughing, hysterically, because it is really, really funny stuff that's well written, and the scenarios, they set him up in these really funny scenarios where he's made to be really awkward or placed in this position where he's just confused. And they take it right up to the edge where it's like, okay, if you push this too much, then he's going to clearly call a bluff and say, okay, this is something's going on here. So there's this fine line they're walking, and I think it's a really unique new production style. You're starting to see a little bit more of these sort of natural and synthetic, creations, and it gives glimpses into, the internal mindset of the guy who's not the actor. There's a lot of angles that are really fascinating, but overall, I like I said, if you're looking for really good comedy, at the very least, this is a really, really funny show. But it also gives insights in sort of the human, strife in a little ways. It's very much based on like each person is their own archetype. So you've got the narcissistic actor who's overly egocentric and always trying to get attention. You've got, each one of these characters is really well thought out, and pre-production was really well done for them to really live these characters. But yeah, man, I'm excited to see how it turns out, but I'm digging it. It's a really funny comedy right now.
Well, everything you said is incredible and amazing, and I think when I was watching it, I was trying to put myself in the shoes of Ronald. So
Right.
he's kind of the star because he's the only one that doesn't know that this is the joke's on him, so to speak, right? And I try to put myself in his shoes and think to myself, like, in a situation like that, like as the episodes go on, like, would I be like, what? But they've covered all those angles, man. They've covered everything. And the last episode, you will see all the inner workings of actually how it was made to answer those questions. So all those moments when I thought like, okay, how do they conveniently have a camera there and this and that?
Right.
Keep in mind, he's told that he's a part of a documentary that explores what it's like to be in jury duty. Right.
Okay.
So it's already expected that there's going to be cameras around. It's expected that there's going to be, whatever. But he doesn't know where all the cameras are. He doesn't know that there's a script that most of these actors are going by. But to your point on the fact that they are improvising, it's true, right? Like there's a suggestion to kind of go down this path, and then boom, it just plays out, and they have to be ready at all costs. So I can only imagine what it takes to produce this show. And fingers crossed, hopefully we get someone from the show onto our show so we could actually talk more about that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I mean, this is a show that there's a lot of really interesting questions we can ask just from a production and editing standpoint and how they did it. And they also get James Marsden, who's a pretty big name actor, and they are able to weave him in without the guy being like, okay, like the fact there's a, big name celebrity involved, this, like all these things that could easily just call red flags. They weave it in well where he's, all the continuity, as you'd say, in the business is like, okay, well, where's the lack of continuity? They have a good answer, like why he's chosen. Well, jury duty is anybody. And they do all these scenarios to make it seem realistic and authentic. So the guy is more genuinely, I guess, convinced or fooled. But it's never in any sort of malicious or exploitative way. It's just this like Truman Show type thing where the dude's like, is this real or not? Like,
it's incredible. I literally have been telling everybody about it, including you, right? I'm just like, bro, every person that I talk to, by the time they finish it, they all come back to me and kind of say the same thing. And so I really, really do hope that it gets the recognition that it deserves.
Yeah. Nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series, Supporting Actor for James Marsden, Writing for Mika Leeper, and Casting for Susie Ferris. So those are all what I would say. Yeah, really great writing, really great casting. James is hilarious in it, and then it's funny.
Yeah, I think
lines up.
The angle about getting James Marsden to agree to do this helps to validate the fact that this was something real, right? Because to Ronald, like, why would James be there if it wasn't above board, right? But the way that James Marsden acted it, which is basically like, shitting on his career in a way, I think he did an amazing job. I feel like this show has a lot of potential. I think many people will walk away with a certain feeling that is a good feeling, right? And like you said, there's nothing in here that is malicious or hurtful to anyone. I think it's like, I almost shed a tear at the end. You know what I mean? Like it's like one of those things where it's funny, but it also tugs at the heartstrings a little bit. And let's see. I'm going to be rooting for the show for sure. And I'm also going to be hoping that they come out with multiple seasons, because why not? So
yeah, it'll be tricky, and the next season's trying to pull it off without people being like, hey, wait, wasn't this similar premise? But they could do it with other things I could see, kind of like governmental required things. But yeah, man, I'm excited for it. I think it should win. It's really well done with the cast and the writing, and I would love to pick the brains of anyone involved with the show if we can get them on. So we'll keep doing more like these. These are we're still working out what we're probably going to call this, maybe culture bites, but we want to give you guys these fun little quick segments of some cool, interesting, under the radar piece of content out there. And stay tuned for more in the future, though.
And if you feel like you have some shows or movies or any interesting bits of content that is worthy of making it to this segment of our show, hit us up. Put some comments in the description or in the comment section, or DM me or whatever. Shout us out and let's have some more fun, because this was fun for me for sure. I love like revisiting something that I watched because I binge watched it, but then going back and doing this segment on it helped me to remember exactly what I was feeling when I was watching it. So that's that.
Yeah, and we love doing comedy, but I would love to, like, whether it's a documentary or some interesting YouTube piece of content, whatever it is, if it's under the radar and we really feel it's of value and embodies the ethos we're about, we'll bring it up for you guys. So I'll keep tuned, and I've got some in mind for future shows for sure.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Well, this is Josh signing out from Simply Walk the Talk. Peace.
Simply walk the talk. Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.